Tonight at 10, there are more people being treated for COVID in the UK's hospitals than at any point in the pandemic. We have a special report from inside the Royal London Hospital, where staff and resources are stretched to the limit.
I wasn't convinced we were going to have a second wave at all, and the huge numbers that have just absolutely slammed us I never thought it would be possible.
And we talk to some of those whose lives have been torn apart in this second wave of the pandemic.
Nobody wants to go through this. I wouldn't wish this on anybody. This really is horrible.
We'll have more on the plight of families and the extreme pressure on the NHS, along with more promising news about the distribution of vaccines. So far, 4 million have been vaccinated, but as we explain, the rollout is not rapid in all parts of the UK.
The eyes to the right, 278. The nose to the left, 0.
Unlock.
MPs, most of them voting from home, want to keep paying the extra £20 in universal credit, but ministers do not have to agree. Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny, who returned to Moscow yesterday and was promptly arrested, urges people to take to the streets for the future of Russia. And in the US, the new presidency will bring a new approach to climate change as part of a massive economic package.
And coming up in sport on BBC News, Arsenal and Newcastle do battle at the Emirates as the visitors hope to turn around their poor league form in the Premier League.
Good evening. There are more people being treated for COVID in hospitals throughout the UK than at any point in the pandemic. The National Medical Director for NHS England, Professor Stephen Powis, reported today that more than 15,000 people have been admitted since Christmas Eve. He said there was extreme pressure on the service, more than we've ever seen, in his words. And the numbers continue to rise as 10 hospital trusts across England reported a lack of capacity in intensive care. To illustrate the distressing reality of what is happening on the front line, Clive Myrie visited the Royal London Hospital to see how staff and families of patients are coping there.
There are those who must look into the abyss to spare all of us.
How many floors are taken up by COVID patients here?
We've got patients on the 3rd floor, 4th floor, 6th floor, 7th floor, 8th floor.
Of 548 beds at the Royal London Hospital, 420 have COVID patients. For 10 days, we joined staff in one of the UK's biggest intensive care units.
Yes, still coming. Go, go, go.
At the peak of the second wave.
He could die from this, by the way. I'm sorry to have to say that.
As a new variant of COVID-19 forces a reckoning for our health service.
Sorry.
So we're now going to run into a problem because we haven't got any beds.
And a reckoning for us.
Nobody wants to go through this. I wouldn't wish this on anybody. This really is horrible.
As London sleeps, the night shift begins at the Royal London Hospital. Nursing sister Carleen Kelly makes her way to a job that's crushing her in the middle of the COVID nightmare.
Sleep isn't what it used to be.
This is Whitechapel.
There's anxiety when you wake up and you remember what you have to go into. We're fragile and angry.
In the emergency department, consultant Nick Bunker is up to his neck in problems.
So he's got COVID and he's had a stroke.
A new COVID patient has been admitted for every hour he's been on shift. By 3 a.m, 8.
So we're now going to run into a problem because we haven't got any beds.
No beds?
So I had 5 beds to start the night. We've got 2 patients next door who need to come in.
Guys, you're going into H4, just down there. Thank you. All right.
And here's another. Where will he go?
Just bring the back of the bed up, see if that helps. And is he on 100% now?
In pressurised rooms, the patients receive oxygen through masks, their condition monitored, but who may need more sustained help from a ventilator.
Keep his sats below 96.
One man's breathing badly falters.
Just do it, just do it, just do it.
He must be intubated fast. And we watch as medics put him to sleep and push a long plastic tube down his throat, hooking him up to his new breathing machine. When he'll wake up, no one knows. Soon, he'll join so many others here, oblivious to night and day. Cared for by strangers like Carleen, whom we spoke to in the first wave of the virus back in May.
I've felt broken on many occasions, and I think a lot of my colleagues have.
Now, the intensity of the second wave is even more frightening.
I use how I feel about this time, like I'm trapped in a cave and the water is slowly rising and I'm barely keeping my head above water. It's scarier, it's bigger. I was so naive the first time. I wasn't convinced we were going to have a second wave at all, and the huge numbers that have just absolutely slammed us is just, I never thought it would be possible to have this many intensive care patients, not at all.
Nick Bunker checks on Carleen and all the staff as he helps monitor around 130 ICU COVID patients
Now is here, or supine?
spread all over the hospital. There were little more than 40 intensive care beds before the pandemic.
Let me know if I need to know.
And he still needs more tonight. A few minutes later, we find a porter with a priceless possession. We soon find out how he sadly came upon it.
Martin, tell me, you've just...
Martin Freeborn said he wanted to speak to us.
My wife lost a fight for life. It was a mixture of COVID and an infection that finally finished her off.
And this is literally in the last few minutes?
Yeah, in the last half hour I've lost her.
Her name was Helen, and she was 64.
What's your message to people watching this who perhaps feel that there is no COVID, there is no battle that everyone is fighting?
It makes me really angry. Nobody wants to go through this. I wouldn't wish this on anybody. This really is horrible. It's real, and people really do need to look after themselves and take care, because you don't want this to happen. I wouldn't wish this on anybody. Please wake up, and please be over careful. You can't do enough to keep yourself safe. Don't end up like us, please. That's the 3 grandchildren and my 3 daughters, and my wife in the background looking on. She loved being a grandmother. It was letters from my daughter, but unfortunately she went on the ventilator before she could see it. Dearest Mum, Helen, Grandma, we love you so much. We miss you more than we can say. You are so strong and have been through so much. You are our hero,
our inspiration, our light
in
this darkness. Until we see you again, and we will. You stay strong as always.
All our love and forever. That'd be Laura, Lindsay and Megan. It's a sad story, isn't it?
Just one of the families suffering there in this pandemic, talking to Clive Myrie, and we'll have more reports from Clive, the cameraman David McElveen and producer Sam Paranti at the Royal London Hospital over the course of this week. Well, the vaccination programme being rolled out across the UK continues to offer hope of an end to the pandemic at some stage. Today, the total number of people who've had their first dose of one of the 3 approved vaccines passed the 4 million mark. And in the past 24-hour period, 225,407 people have been vaccinated. In England, those aged 70 and over, as well as those listed as clinically vulnerable, will now begin receiving offers of a vaccine this week. But as our health editor Hugh Pym reports, how quickly you get called often depends on where you live.
With 10 new mass vaccination centres opening today, this one at St Helens Rugby League Stadium, the pace of the rollout was being stepped up.
I'm going to be giving you your vaccine today, OK?
And there was plenty of praise from those in priority groups who'd been invited to attend for their jabs.
It's been fantastic, so pleased that it's on the way for everybody, not just for me, but for everybody.
It was brilliant. I'm really surprised how turned on it is. I think it's great.
Okay, this is very good. The fire reactors in
The
here.
Prime Minister was visiting Oxford Biomedica, one of the companies manufacturing the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine. He said good progress was being made, but stressed there was no guarantee of a rapid lifting of restrictions.
I'm afraid I've got to warn people, it will be gradual. You can't just open up in a great open sesame, a great bang, because I'm afraid the situation is still pretty precarious, as people can tell.
Priority groups in the vaccine rollout plan are care home staff and residents, NHS and care workers, those aged 70 and over, and the clinically extremely vulnerable. That's 15 million people being offered a first dose by the middle of February. After that come those aged 50 and over and younger adults with underlying health conditions. That's an additional 17 million being offered that first dose by the spring of this year. So what happens after that? Well, ministers have indicated that teachers, police and shop workers might well be at the top of the list.
Scratch coming.
Some vaccination centres and hubs in England have done most of the over 80s in their area, and from this week will start offering jabs to the over 70s. This GP in Kent, though, says he's frustrated he's not yet able to do that.
We're still doing the over 80s, and I would like that message to go out there that I know there's been a lot of media attention indicating that the over 70s are going to be invited in, but at the moment we're not able to do that. It's not because we don't want to, because we do. It's simply we don't have the vaccine in enough quantity.
There are regional variations, although the overall numbers are encouraging. What do you say to local teams who say they can't get a hold of enough doses?
There are parts of the country that have made very significant progress and gone a bit faster than the average, and I thank them. What we're doing now is making sure that whilst they, of course, will be able to move on to the next group, we're prioritising the supply of the vaccine into those parts of the country that need to complete the over 80s.
The Cabinet Minister Therese Coffey tweeted something isn't quite right in her constituency because in some places 70-year-olds were being contacted ahead of older age groups. Later she tweeted she'd been assured all those in their 80s and 90s who hadn't heard anything would get letters or messages. In Northern Ireland, 8.7% of adults have had a first dose of the vaccine. In England, the figure is 8%. In both Scotland and Wales, it's around 6% of the adult population. Around 4 million have had their first jab. The plan seems to be on track, but there's still some way to go. Hugh Pym, BBC News.
We'll talk to Hugh in just a moment. Let's have the figures first. The official figures suggesting that the number of coronavirus cases is now falling. There were 37,535 new infections recorded in the latest 24-hour period, which means that on average, the number of new cases reported per day in the past week is 44,997. Across the UK, an average of 35,882 people were in hospital with coronavirus over the 7 days to Sunday. That includes suspected cases in Wales. 599 deaths were reported. That's people who died within 28 days of a positive COVID test. On average, in the past week, 1,129 deaths were announced every day. The total number of deaths so far across the UK is 89,860. So, as I mentioned, Hugh is with me again, our health editor, Hugh Pym. Let's talk about this rollout of the vaccine. And clearly people are being encouraged by some of the figures that we're seeing. But the rollout seems to be patchy across the UK. What can you tell us?
Yes, Hugh, an increasing debate about the varied speed of rollout in different parts of the UK. Matt Hancock has said again that supply is a rate-limiting factor, as we heard there. He's saying there needs to be a prioritisation now in areas which have moved slower than others in England at getting the over 80s and other priority groups jabbed. And there is quite a big regional difference between London and the east of England, lagging behind other regions. Mark Drakeford, meanwhile, the First Minister in Wales, has said also there are supply limits. He said there was enough Pfizer vaccine to get through until February, but it couldn't all be used at once because, quotes, vaccinators would be standing around and doing nothing. Now, that provoked attacks immediately from opposition parties and the British Medical Association. Later on, he clarified, let me be completely clear, nobody is holding back vaccines. Having done about 300,000 a day across the UK of the first doses, that slipped back a bit, that daily rate, though there could be a weekend effect. But let's be clear, more than 4 million doses administered is pretty much in line with plans, and the UK is still well ahead of other European countries relative to population and the US for getting the vaccines administered. Ministers do say it won't be easy, but they still seem confident they'll hit their targets.
OK, Hugh, once again, many thanks. Hugh Pym there, our health editor, with the latest on the rollout figures. Now, the House of Commons has voted tonight to support a Labour motion which calls for the £20 increase in universal credit to be continued beyond the end of March. Despite the government ordering its MPs to abstain, 6 Conservative MPs did defy their party and voted for the motion, although crucially, the result is not binding on ministers. Around 6 million people currently claim universal credit, and Labour says that at this time of great anxiety for many, families need certainty that their incomes will be protected. Our political editor Laura Kuensberg has more details.
The view from the rooftops was part of daily life, but the world looks different now for Carl. No longer well enough to work as a roofer.
This is another new skill I've learned since the...
Retraining and relying completely on universal credit, including what's for him a vital extra £20 a week.
I've gone from not having enough to barely having enough. It has made a big difference. In real terms, it's an extra £2.50 a day. And I can use that money to have the heating on an extra hour, maybe buy some fruit, maybe buy some eggs, even at that basic level.
Everything's got to go in.
With thousands of jobs being lost and hours being cut, there's pressure on so many households. The Labour leader says right now, the 6 million people on low incomes or out of work who receive universal credit
Better not all fall off now.
just can't afford to lose that £20 top-up, which is due to disappear in March.
This £20 uplift has been the difference between making ends meet or not for many, many families. We're still in the middle of a pandemic and the government wants to get rid of that uplift, which is vital to those families. It's the wrong thing to do.
But keeping going would have a huge price tag. Making the £20 permanent would cost about £6 billion a year. That wouldn't even be covered by a penny increase on income tax. So as one minister put it, the Treasury is fighting this exceptionally hard. But growing numbers of Tory MPs themselves worried that at the end of March, too many people's finances will be just too shaky to cope with losing the cash.
Order.
So a sprinkling of them defied party bosses to vote with the opposition tonight to preserve the payment.
The ayes to the right, 278.
It doesn't force the government to change tack, but the pressure just might.
People have lost their livelihoods, they've lost their income, so I absolutely believe that universal credit should be extended.
How often does new stuff come in? All the time.
And while the Prime Minister's focus is on the vaccine, a decision on this has to be made before too long.
We've got to get our country through the health crisis. I think that actually the UK is capable of staging a very, very powerful economic recovery, but we've got to look after people throughout the pandemic.
A hint, the £20 top-up could last as long as the restrictions. Carl believes that's claimants due.
A lot of the people who depend on universal credit are in work, and they are the people that the country's relied on. I think they should be shown a little bit of gratitude and at least dignity.
A pricey decision for the government to pursue, but cutting off the cash would have a political cost that ministers might want to avoid. Laura Kunsberg, BBC News, Westminster.
Let's turn to the day's other main stories then, and the inquiry into the Manchester Arena terror attack back in 2017, in which 22 people died, has resumed today, focusing on the response of the emergency services. New questions have been asked about whether the youngest victim, Safi Roussos, could have survived if medics had responded differently. One member of the public who tried to help the 8-year-old as she lay injured has been speaking to our North of England correspondent, Judith Moritz.
And I saw a little girl lying there. Then I bent down to her. She's still conscious. I asked her name, and I thought she said Sophie.
Her name was Safi, 8 years old, and lying on the floor of Manchester Arena after the bomb went off. The first person to reach her was poster seller Paul Reed.
And she just started. She wasn't upset. She just got a little bit upset. She asked me for her mum, and I said, "Not to worry, we're going to find her in a minute."
And do you remember anybody trying to bring bandages or anything to try to stop the blood?
There was nobody. There was no bandages.
Paul's been commended for helping to carry Safi out and get her into an ambulance quickly. Experts appointed by the Manchester Arena inquiry say her injuries were unsurvivable. But a different team commissioned by the Roussos family has said she might have survived if she'd received better medical treatment. The little girl died more than an hour after the attack, after losing a critical amount of blood. Her parents have only recently learned the expert opinion that she didn't get the help she needed.
There was a member of the public with her. I can't expect him to tourniquet her, splinter legs and so on. But the medically trained people that were with her didn't apply basic first aid to give Safi a chance.
Paul Reed says he's still haunted by the memories of that night.
It's just a sense of fire.
You know, Safi's parents have said they wouldn't expect a member of the public to have had that training, know what to do.
I'm first aid trained, but the most I'd done was put a plaster on. I mean, to step on that fire, some of them people, it was carnage.
The Manchester Arena inquiry will now examine the emergency response to the attack. The inquiry's heard it's important to acknowledge the enormous pressure which those who responded that night came under. Judith Moritz, BBC News, Manchester.
Some more news in brief now then, and fish producers and businesses have staged a protest at Westminster today to highlight the problems that they've been having exporting their produce since the UK's Brexit transition period ended. Exports of fresh fish and seafood have been severely disrupted by new customs controls. More than 20 lorries drove up Whitehall. A number of people were reported for COVID-related offences. The head of the World Health Organization has said that the world is on the verge of a catastrophic moral failure over the way that COVID vaccines are being shared out. Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus said that the current approach would lead to hoarding, delaying the delivery of vaccines to poorer countries and prolonging the pandemic. China is on course to be the only major economy in the world to have grown in 2020. Strict containment of coronavirus and emergency relief for business helped to stimulate the economy there. It grew 2.3% over the year, although that is China's slowest rate of growth for more than 40 years. Now, Russia's most prominent opposition figure, Alexei Navalny, has urged people to take to the streets for the future of Russia after he returned to Moscow for the first time since being poisoned last year. Mr. Navalny was speaking at a court hearing which took place inside a police station, having been accused of breaking the terms of a suspended jail sentence. Tonight, the Foreign Secretary here, Dominic Raab, condemned the decision to detain Mr. Navalny. From Moscow, our correspondent Steve Rosenberg has the latest.
We're for Navalny, it says. Alexei, Alexei, they shout. Mr. Navalny's supporters came to the police station where he was being held. A makeshift courtroom had been set up inside. It would rule on whether the Kremlin critic should be sent to jail. In a freezing cold Russian winter, piping hot tea was a welcome relief. It's bitterly cold here. It's minus 20. But supporters of Mr. Navalny are waiting for the result of the court hearing and shouting, "Let him go." In a video message from the courtroom, Mr. Navalny denounced the hearing as a mockery of justice. After he was ordered to be kept in custody for 30 days, he called on Russians to take to the streets and not stay silent. Alexei Navalny is the Russian opposition leader most capable of organising large-scale anti-government protests. It's why the Kremlin sees him as a threat.
Navalny was and is danger number one for Vladimir Putin in Russia. It's very difficult to fight against massive public protests.
Mr. Navalny is convinced it was the Kremlin that ordered his poisoning by nerve agent. The Russian authorities deny any connection, but the decision to detain him will have been taken at the very top. For now, he's going to jail for a month. That could turn into years, and if it does, the authorities risk turning Alexei Navalny into a political martyr, something the Kremlin always wanted to avoid. Steve Rosenberg, BBC News, Moscow.
Now, by this time on Wednesday, the United States will have a new president, and when Joe Biden replaces Donald Trump in the Oval Office, there'll be an immediate reversal on climate policy, with the US rejoining the Paris Climate Agreement. Its aim is to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. Reducing emissions will be a key focus of Mr. Biden's $2 trillion package for the US economy. The new president could transform the prospects for international climate diplomacy. Our chief environment correspondent Justin Rowlatt has more details.
Tackling climate change was not, how shall I put this, a priority for President Trump.
All of this with the global warming and that, a lot of it's a hoax. It's a hoax. I mean, it's a money-making industry, okay?
For Joe Biden, it is at the heart of everything he plans to do.
In the battle to save our planet by getting climate under control.
Todd Stern is Democratic royalty. Obama's climate envoy, Bill Clinton's chief of staff.
Climate, it's going to be a key priority, shaping his national security policy as well as domestic. I don't think he's going to get every single thing he wants done because that never happens. But do I think he's going to get a significant part of his plan and his strategy executed? Yes, I do.
Mr. Biden says he wants US electricity to be carbon-free by 2035, so much more renewable power. Fossil fuel subsidies will go, and there'll be cash for electric vehicle infrastructure. 4 million US buildings will get a green makeover. It is an ambitious agenda, and the Biden team knows there will be pushback.
We're talking about a really sort of almost a handbrake turn in how the economy works. Carbon has been the lifeblood of the economy, and so it's going to require a deeply coordinated effort across the economic management of the United States in order to be able to get to the kind of speed of change he wants to see.
With a wafer-thin majority in the Senate, Mr. Biden can't be certain to get the cash or the legislation he needs for his radical plans, but he has a much freer hand internationally. Glasgow will be hosting a landmark international climate summit in November, COP26. With Biden in the White House, it stands a much better chance of making significant progress on climate change, says the woman who negotiated the Paris Climate Agreement on behalf of the UN.
The new Biden administration is absolutely key to success at COP26. I have no doubt that they will reach out and they will begin to weave together a collaborative spirit for COP26, which has to be a spirit of increased ambition beyond what we have today.
The wildfires and hurricanes America experienced last year have added fuel to the debate. President Biden plans to change America's policy on climate and the world's too. His challenge will be keeping the American public with him. Justin Rowlatt, BBC News.
Let's Go live to Washington, and our North America editor John Sopel is there. So we're talking about climate, John, but other things too. What kind of range of policy reversals do you think we'll see?
Well, the big weapon that Joe Biden has got is the executive order, which means he doesn't have to go to Congress. You're going to see a big economic stimulus package that is going to hopefully revive the US economy after the pandemic. And the other priority is the pandemic itself. He wants to make wearing masks mandatory for people across the United States. He also, I heard you talking earlier about the vaccine program being spotty in the UK. Well, it's going a lot better there than it is here. And he wants to see 100 million vaccines in the first 100 days in office.
All of this, John, of course, will be happening after the inauguration. Tell us a little bit about the security measures in place for that.
It's unreal, Hugh. I mean, where I am now, I'm still nearly 2 miles away from the Capitol where the inauguration will take place. You can see the troops there from Pennsylvania. It's Border Force policemen on duty. And if you want a sign of just how tense Washington is, how febrile the atmosphere is, you have got 25,000 National Guardsmen who have come into the city to guard. But there's a worry that some of them may be loyal Trump supporters. And so you now have the bizarre situation that the FBI are doing background checks on some of the guardsmen that will be keeping Joe Biden safe.
John, many thanks again. John Sopel there with the latest for us on the streets of Washington. A team of Nepalese climbers has become the first ever to reach the top of the world's second highest mountain, K2, during the winter. The summit along the border between Pakistan and China is notoriously dangerous. Sekunda Kermani sent this report.
Conquering the so-called savage mountain in the depth of winter. For decades it defied the world's toughest climbers. Now, this former Gurkha and British Special Forces soldier,
this is my team here in the tent, hello,
along with a team of other Nepalese mountaineers, has made history.
It was super cold and every step we climbed was an effort. So, when we get to the summit, what we did was just 10 meters before the summit, we whole team stopped together and we sing the national anthem of Nepal and we made it to the summit together. Some of the, obviously, team members were very emotional as well, including myself.
There are 14 mountains in the world higher than 8,000 meters. K2 was the only one yet to be scaled in winter because it's so challenging. Dozens have lost their lives on the mountain.
K2 is super steep. Either you have to go through, blue ice or a rock. So it's very technical. On top of that, if you add, the temperature up to, minus 65 degrees, even minus 70, what it kept everybody going, was everybody wanted this to their bone.
The men began as members of different teams, but banded together to reach the summit. A huge success for Nepal, whose mountaineers have often worked out of the spotlight, supporting Western climbers. Sekunda Kermani, BBC News, Islamabad.
That's it from us now on BBC One. It's time for the news where you are. Have a good night.